Your championship run starts this week in week 15, or maybe it's your run to not be embarrassing yourself at the end of the season. Either way, we've got starts and sits for you ahead of your week 15 fantasy football matchup. Starts and sits at every position. We'll start at the quarterback and work our way down through the tight end position. Cameron, we're going to start with you. Who's your quarterback start this week?
Lightning's going to strike twice, so I'm taking Caleb Williams against the Minnesota Vikings. He had 340-2 against the Vikings in their last matchup. He's had 2+ touchdowns in 3 straight games, and I know the San Francisco game was not pretty, but he finished it so it wasn't, didn't absolutely kill you. Still finished with 14 fantasy points. It felt like it was going to be a lot worse if you watched the beginning of that game. And if you're watching the film over on YouTube too, you see it. It's a lot of just dink and dumps, especially at the beginning of the game to get him going. But he's had, 270 Vikings are still giving up 270 passing yards to quarterbacks over the last 5 weeks. He's put up 26 fantasy points in those 2 weeks before the San Francisco game. I think they're going to look to get him back on track early using, Keenan Allen with some quick hitters, DJ Moore in the screen game, Rome Odunze. I don't know if you guys saw, but his dad is upset with the Bears offense on Twitter. So hopefully that gets him into gear. But I like the matchup, and I think he's been playing well enough despite this last game that you can trust him this late in the year, and I do think it should be said too, for Caleb Williams, I'm not saying he's a top 5 starter. This is for if you're you're got some bubble guys and you're, which way do I go with it? Right. If you got Lamar Jackson, you're starting Lamar Jackson. He's a fringe top 12 guy. I just want to make sure people are like, oh, I got to get crazy, with Caleb Williams. Still a top 12 fringe guy. But if you're one of those teams, I think that you can plug him in here and feel confident about him this week.
Well, you mentioned dink and dunk to get Caleb going. I mean, that wasn't even until the second half. I mean, the Bears had less than 10 total yards on offense before halftime. So really at the start of the second half, right, was when they really started getting momentum. But at that point, the Bears were pretty out of it. We'll see. Tyler, how do you feel about Caleb Williams against the Vikings this week?
Yeah, if my start wasn't the start I was going with, it would have been Caleb Williams. I just think this matchup against Minnesota, he showed it 2 weeks ago. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that we're going to see the exact same kind of performance from Caleb. But to Cam's point, he pointed out that this Vikings defense, they are a bend but don't break, so they give up a ton of yards. They will let you move the ball down the field. Yeah, just a matter of touchdowns. And the thing is, too, in that Minnesota game, was his ability to extend the play. If that happens again, Caleb is going to have a good game against Minnesota. So I'm all for Caleb this week.
Minnesota allowing the most pass attempts this year, the 3rd most passing yards as well. So, I think you can fire up Caleb this week inside, whether or not an impact here. The weakness is in their secondary on defense. So, I think Caleb Williams is a fine start this week. If you're, sifting through your quarterbacks in a deeper league even, Caleb Williams should be a guy you could be looking to start this week. How about you, Ty? Who's your quarterback start?
My QB start is Brock Purdy. Going up against the Rams this week. When they played earlier this year, he threw for nearly 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was the QB5 on the week. And last week against the Bears, 325 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he was the QB7 on the week. And what last week showed me was that the shoulder isn't too much of an issue for Purdy at this point. The concern coming out of the Buffalo game, yes, it was all snowy and stuff, but when it was 3rd and long, they were not really wanting to push the ball down the field. Again, whether that was because of the shoulder injury or the snow, I didn't know. So this game against Chicago, the shoulder looked just fine to me. So I think Purdy is good to go. And against this Rams secondary, this is not a bad matchup in the slightest, right? Any numbers are going to be skewed by the last game against the Bills. But the 3 games before that, Drake May threw for 282 yards. Then it was the Saquon legacy game in week 12. And then it was the Saints with no weapons. So the last 4 games, the last 4 weeks for the Rams, whatever stats you look up, I don't think it creates an accurate picture. And I think Purdy actually has a very, very good game against this Rams defense.
9th most fantasy points per game allowed to quarterbacks this year. 7th in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed this year to quarterbacks as well, have the Rams given up. Cameron, you and I talked a little bit about this game in our risers and fallers rankings episode just yesterday. And we mentioned how this game, is it possible that the Rams come out flat in this game? Is it possible that, they not necessarily had their Super Bowl against Buffalo, but again, when you go toe-to-toe putting up 86 total points against Josh Allen, that might suck something out of you despite, this being a divisional matchup worth getting up for. Where are you at on Brock Purdy this week? Are you good with him as a start?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to lean on him too in this one. Just with Garendo coming in with an injury. So even if he does play, it's how involved is he going to be? Is he going to get the full workload again? In other words, you're relying on Patrick Taylor, Keyshawn Vaughn, and, Izzy Abanikanda, who you picked up from the practice squad. So, the run game isn't really inspiring. So I think they are going to have to lean on him. Like Ty said, the last 4 weeks haven't been indicative of how good this Rams defense is, actually been, right? They've struggled against the pass. And so I think he can exploit that in this one. And San Francisco needs to win. Obviously, so does the Rams. So I think even if the Rams start flat, I think this is going to be a good game because both teams need this to keep their playoff hopes alive.
Yeah, speaking of teams that struggle against the pass, let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Justin Herbert gets them this week. That is why he is my start of the week. He's started to cool off over the last 2 weeks. He was averaging 21 fantasy points per game in the 5 weeks prior. But again, this Buccaneers defense, first in fantasy points per game allowed to quarterbacks, first in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to the position. This Tampa Bay secondary just cannot stay healthy this year. They're missing pieces last week. We're recording this Wednesday evening. I haven't gotten a chance to actually look over the practice report yet this week for the Bucs. But if they're down secondary weapons again this week, this is where the weakness of that defense is. The only 2 quarterbacks to not throw for at least 240 yards against the Bucs since week 5 are Tommy DeVito and Aiden O'Connell. I would certainly like to think Justin Herbert is light years ahead of both of those quarterbacks. So I think you could see Justin Herbert toss a couple touchdowns in this game, give you 240 plus through the air. For me, he's a top 10 option at the position this week. I really like Herbert against the Bucs.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think Ladd McConkey coming back, hopefully, is a big reason why he's second among rookies in receptions right now. So he's been having a fantastic year. And you look at the volume, he had 9, 6, and 12 targets 3 games before he went out in week 14. So I really think that's kind of the crux of the whole thing is he just hasn't had anyone to throw to. Yeah. That's just what it comes down to. You bring him back in a plus matchup where the Chargers, they're 6th in the AFC playoffs, so obviously need a win here, tied with the Broncos and Ravens. And so, yeah, I think Justin Herbert comes to play. I think Jim Harbaugh comes to play. So, yeah, I really like Justin Herbert in this one.
Where are you at on Herbert, Ty?
I struggle a bit just with the last 2 games because the floor is just that much lower now because of those games. I don't want to put too much of the conclusion on J.K. Dobbins now being out, but this Chargers offense is a little bit different without J.K. Dobbins. They are they have the 10th fewest EPA per play without J.K. Dobbins. So over the last 2 weeks, all that really says to me is that it confirms that there's a low floor, but that does not mean that there isn't a high ceiling with Justin Herbert. And to, like Cam said, with Ladd McConkey back in the mix, that's definitely going to help Justin Herbert.
Before we move on to our quarterback sits of the week, got to remind the people, we go live on Sunday mornings before kickoff to answer even more start-sit questions. So to get notified when we go live, make sure you're subscribed and turn on those notifications as well. You'll be alerted as soon as we hit that live button. You'll also be alerted when all of our newest content is coming out as well. We're going to have a few different schedule adjustments over the next couple of weeks here to wrap out the regular season, but we are still bringing you league-winning content. We're not going anywhere. We're even going to go through the off-season as well with some Dynasty NFL draft content for you all as well. So make sure you're around for that. We're going to help you all win regardless of your league format. Hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell as well. We are grateful for all of your support. And yes, some of you might be like, this is my 8th video I've watched of the fellas, and I still haven't subscribed yet. And I just haven't realized it. That's totally okay if that's you. Welcome to the fellowship if that's now you. So we appreciate your support. It helps us continue to do what we love doing here, which is talking fantasy football with you all. Quarterback sits of the week, fellas. Let's breeze through these quick. Who's yours, Cameron?
Mine's Matthew Stafford, and I think he falls into that same category of Caleb Williams, of guys you're probably considering, if you lost a quarterback or you drafted a bum, I think he's in that category. The only issue is, and I know he's been rolling, he's playing really well as of late, but he's since he joined the Rams, he's 1-5 against the 49ers. He's averaging 240 and a touchdown, which is not a bad stat line, but it's also, that's 14 fantasy points. That's not going to get the job done in the playoffs. He needs 250 and 2 to have an 18-point outing. And I think that's his ceiling. The 49ers are, allowing 156 pass yards a game over their last 6, which obviously you throw in the Bills game where they got destroyed. You throw in the Packers game where they got destroyed. The numbers are a little wonky, but they've only given up over 270 passing yards once this year. They've never given up more than 2 touchdowns. And I think the Rams are really going to try to establish the run with Kyren against this defense.
Ty, I'm shocked your quarterback sit you would ever even speak ill of. Who's your quarterback sit this week? Oh my goodness, this dude doesn't know how to unmute the mute button.
That's 2 episodes in a row. That's a bad beat. That's a bad beat.
That's not even a bad beat. That's just embarrassing.
Brutal.
Yeah. Do I even share my sit at this point? I feel like
no,
we should
my
just
sit
move
is
on.
Russell Wilson, who my interest in anyone against the Eagles offense right now is extremely low. But if he's without George Pickens again this week, that interest it instantly goes to 0. 6th fewest passing yards, or 6th fewest fantasy points per game. Excuse me, 5th fewest passing yards, 3rd fewest passing touchdowns as well. Not a great matchup here for Russ. Go ahead, Ty. I'll let you talk about your quarterbacks now.
We should just move on to running backs at this point, honestly. No, Anthony Richardson should stay on your bench this week. Number 1 on my jersey list, but number 1 on my bench this week. He's on the road versus Denver. And yes, Jameis just threw for nearly 500 against them, but I don't think Anthony Richardson is going to throw 58 times against them.
Yeah.
And before that game, Denver was allowing the 7th fewest passing yards per game at home. I don't care about the rushing upside in this one. The passing game is just going to be ugly. You keep them on your bench.
Let's move on to running back so you can play this week. Enough with the negative here. Cameron, who's your running back start of the week?
I'm going with Aaron Jones, and originally I wasn't going to because I was like, this one's too easy. But Fantasy Pros consensus has him down at the running back 20.
Really?
And looking at him on the field last week, he looked good. He looked like he was back. I know Arizona was disappointing, right? 5 carries, had the fumbling issues, fumbled against Chicago the week before. But he had 13 attempts, 73 yards, and a touchdown in a game where Minnesota dominated through the air. That was all about Sam Darnold, Jordan Addison, and Justin Jefferson last week. And Aaron Jones still put up, a very respectable week. When he played Chicago, he had 19 fantasy points. He had a touchdown, 22 carries, 100 yards. Chicago's allowing the 6th most yards per rush over the last 5 and the 5 highest yards before contact. I think that's a big point for him is you get a running start against them pretty much. They're allowing 2.7 yards before contact. And then Minnesota's a 7-point favorite at home. So I think they're going to look to establish a run. They're going to look to put away Chicago early. And I think Aaron Jones is going to be a really big part of that.
6 straight games, Chicago has allowed a 70-yard rusher. When the Lions played them, both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs had 80-plus yards. Where are you at on Aaron Jones this week, Ty? I'm shocked that Fantasy Pros has him down at the running back 20.
No.
That feels significantly too low for me.
Yeah, that is too low for me as well. I think I can at least see where people get it though, just between a fumbling. If he fumbles once, like he may not get back on the field like he did against, Arizona. So I can see it like that, but at the same time, ever since Andrew Billings got hurt for Chicago, teams can just run like no tomorrow against the Chicago defense.
Yep.
I don't think. Yes, Minnesota's run defense isn't as consistent as other teams this year, but Minnesota can absolutely take advantage of that.
I'm going to come right back to you, Ty. Who's your running back start this week?
Cam, do you want to introduce him?
Chuba Hubbard, baby.
Chuba Hubbard. Yes, sir. I'm going to keep picking on this Cowboys run defense, especially after they lost their standout linebacker DeMarvion Overshown. And I'm not going to lie, I was impressed by the Panthers last week, right? I mean, I think most people were, considering the spread was in double digits and the Panthers actually had a chance to win the game against the Eagles.
It was one play away. Yeah.
One play away. If they stay competitive in games like it have been ever since the Kansas City game, so the last 3 weeks, Chuba is going to continue getting the rock. He's been the running back 4 in usage ever since Carolina came out of their bye week. I seriously think he's got top 10 upside this week. Again, because of the matchup and the usage that he's got. This Cowboys defense is allowing the 4th most yards per carry the last month. So you got a guy that is, I don't want to say it's a guarantee, but it would not surprise me if Chuba Hubbard gets at least 20 touches in this game, and you're going to give up that many yards per carry. Like, Chuba Hubbard could absolutely feast this week.
Yeah, you're without Jonathan Brooks now as well. Miles Sanders has been on injured reserve. I believe he still will be through this game as well. So it is Chuba Hubbard and Raheem Blackshear. Is he even healthy too? I know he left last week's game a little bit or came into last week's game a little bit banged up as well. I don't keep tabs on Blackshear, but I remember hearing that during the broadcast, right? I mean, it's Chuba Hubbard and who? So yeah, if this Panthers offense stays competitive, I mean, this is a game they can just win outright against the Dallas Cowboys. If they can stay pace with the Eagles, they should have no time or have no trouble, staying competitive here with the Dallas Cowboys. Where are you at with Chuba Hubbard, Cameron?
Yeah, the volume's been outrageous all year, even for a really bad team. Since week 3 before the bye, he only had one game with less than 15 carries, and Carolina wasn't exactly competitive in all of those games. So, then after the bye, he only had 12 carries against Tampa. But like you said, Jonathan Brooks is in that game. Brooks misses this game and he puts up 26 carries. And I just don't think Dallas's offense has enough where I'm worried about it. Right? They only put up 20 points last week against Cincinnati. And Cincinnati has shown time and time again that they have a terrible defense. So I think it could be very similar type of game in this one. And if it is, Chuba's going to get just an insane workload.
I'm going to flip to the other side of the ball for my running back start, because my start this week is Rico Dowdle. The Cowboys are done being cute. It's been Rico Dowdle. It's going to continue being all Rico Dowdle as well. Over the last 3 weeks, he's averaging nearly 110 rushing yards per game. He's had 18 plus carries in each of those games, and he now has 3 straight finishes as a running back 2 or better, including a top 10 running back finish in those 3 games. I mean, I can give you all the stats on the Panthers. Most fantasy points per game allowed to running backs, most rushing yards allowed to running backs, most rushing touchdowns allowed to running backs, first in opponent rush success rate this year. They're giving up nearly 4.97 yards per carry. I don't think I need to say much more here about Rico Dowdle. I don't mean to leave. I don't mean to eat and leave no crumbs for you all, but that's where I'm at with Rico Dowdle right now.
Yeah, it really just is. Running back plays Panthers defense, who has the full workload, start him. It is that simple of a conversation for the rest of the year. So I would agree 100% on Rico.
How about you, Todd?
Running back 11 in points per game over the last 3 weeks. That's all that really needs to be said for me.
Yeah, I think Cameron, you summarized it so well. Running back with workload plays bad Panthers defense. Okay, sure. Yes, he will be in my lineup this week. On the not so positive side, though, let's talk about the running back sits this week. We had 3 very interesting names here, and if people don't have a choice but to play these guys, I get it. But if you do have a Chuba or a Rico Dowdle on your team, I mean, those are guys I am absolutely playing ahead of all 3 of these guys this week. So Cameron, who's your running back sit this week?
Yeah, we talked about him yesterday, on the episode. It was Tyrone Tracy. And it really just comes down to who they're playing, right? They're playing against the Ravens, who have not allowed a running back to top 65 yards this season other than Saquon Barkley. And if you think Tyrone Tracy is Saquon Barkley, I got news for you. He's not. Okay. And so the last 3 games, he hasn't had over 45 plus yards. And right now over the last 5, or right now on the season, Baltimore's allowing the lowest yards per carry, lowest yards per game, and lowest amount of runs over 5 yards. And their quarterback is Drew Lock.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks.
And you know what? We asked for him over and over and over instead of Tommy DeVito.
I didn't ask for Drew Lock, but
there was a lot of people who were like, for Malik Neighbors' sake, put him out there. And he showed why there wasn't a right choice for the Giants to make after they got rid of Daniel Jones. So I think that's kind of what it comes down to, is the offense isn't going to move the ball against the best run defense in the NFL right now.
Ty, I want to make sure before I say this, I am not throwing you under the bus as one of those people. I just remember you and I had a distinctive conversation about this. I can't remember who we were talking about, but I remember you and I had a conversation of, is it actually better for a Tommy DeVito or a Drew Lock to be under center for Malik Neighbors? And you were on the Drew Lock side. I was on the I don't know if it actually matters side. I think it's going to stink either way. And again, that's not to victory lap anything, but I remember us having that conversation. It's like, man, people really did want Drew Lock. It has not been good no matter what. I will ask you this though, Ty. How do you remedy the fact that Tyrone Tracy also had 10 targets last week? Is there PPR value to be had here against the Baltimore Ravens this week, or are you pretty much just avoiding Tyrone Tracy if you can?
Well, when your starting quarterback is actually going to be Tommy DeVito this week because Drew Lock is in a walking boot due to his heel injury.
Totally missed that.
Yeah. So I am totally okay just fading any Giants player besides Malik Neighbors. Like, yeah, I'm not interested, like, at all. I don't care that you got 10 targets the week before. I just, for fantasy playoff sake, this is not something that I'm willing to take the risk on.
Yeah, that did come out literally about midday today. So that is why I have been working all afternoon and have not gotten caught up on my NFL news prior to this. So yes, good catch on that. That Tommy DeVito will indeed be the starter this week.
Yeah.
I'll come right back to you. Oh, go ahead, Cameron. You're gonna chime in.
I was just gonna say their names are interchangeable, so that's my bad. But we'll pay our editor.
One of them has a sweet agent though. The other one doesn't.
Yeah, we'll pay our editor to just insert Tommy DeVito instead of Drew Lock. So kind like it ever happened.
Tommy DeVito. Ty, who's your running back set this week?
So I need to set the scene here for my sit. It's Isaiah Pacheco. Okay. A fellow is having issues sending messages in our group chat. So he hits us up on our backup group chat. Okay. Then out of nowhere, this fella sends a message directed at me that says, and I quote, "The Browns are allowing the 5th most rush yards over the last 5 games. Not going to name names, but per Cameron Lawrence."
I don't even care. Like, you're wrong. So
no,
you're not wrong about it being me. You're wrong about your stats. Your stats suck.
We're going to break this one down. Okay. The Browns had a bye in week 10. So their last 5 games, some teams have played 6 games. So your stats, Mr. Lawrence, are ruled moot and nullified. Okay. They are allowing the 3rd most rushing yards since week 11.
What? So, where are you going with this?
You're going the wrong way.
No. Just listen. It all makes sense. 25% of those yards came from Taysom Hill in 1 game on just 7 carries. Okay. Since then, so since week 12, they are allowing the 5th fewest yards per carry. They are 15th in rushing yards allowed per game. So yes, Isaiah Pacheco last week got the majority of snaps and carries, got 4 targets. So it wouldn't surprise me if he gets the touches again this week, but I just don't think they're going to go anywhere against this Brown defense that have been playing better against the run in recent weeks.
30th in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to running backs this year, meaning they are well below expectation in points allowed to the position this year. You got a rebuttal here, Cameron? Because I think you can go either way with Pacheco. I get if you need to play him, but I actually do think that this Browns defense is stingier than their one matchup with the New Orleans Saints might suggest.
So my biggest concern is Pacheco saw 14 carries last week. I think this Kansas City team is going to put up points on Cleveland. And so I just think Pacheco's got a higher chance of scoring in this one. Cleveland's defense overall has not been great. They just haven't. And you know what? That might be in part to the fact that Jameis throws 3 interceptions a game. So teams get a start on, the Cleveland side of the 50 more often than not. But it's just, I think Pacheco is going to just continue to kind of ramp up. I personally think he's probably still a top 24 running back, but I'm not out on Pacheco this week either.
You got that face, Ty, of like, shut up. I got a point that's going to smoke you out.
Kansas City is just not putting up points right now. That's the thing. Like,
for
the last 5 games.
It's Dominic the donkey, jingity-jing, the Italian Christmas donkey.
That's what I think of your argument.
What's up with you and these drops today?
I don't know. I've been feeling it. That's our version of getting rickrolled.
I think you have a point there, though. I mean, this Kansas City Chiefs, they don't play fun football to watch. It's a molasses pace that they play with here right now.
Yeah, I mean, you put up 16 against Denver, put up 21 against Buffalo, 19 and 19 against Vegas and the Chargers. They are not putting up points right now.
Kane's meal that he scores 14 PPR fantasy points this week.
Oh, I like this.
You know what? Let's do this. I'll get back to you on it.
Get back to him.
We already have one on the line. I don't know if I can afford two. Or I shouldn't say we have one on the line. It's already guaranteed that you're getting one on me.
Yes,
So
you gotta stand by what you're saying here, Ty. You gotta say yes. 14, that's way higher than he's projected. He's only projected like 11.
yeah.
10.
What?
You can negotiate him down to
Where?
12 and a half.
Fantasy pros.
ESPN projection, 13 attempts, 64 yards, 0.4 touchdowns, 14.6 fantasy points. Fine, we'll do it.
Yes.
There it is. Kane steal. Well done, fellas. There we go. Kane's on the
Really
line.
good.
Isaiah Pacheco to score at least 14 fantasy points this week. All right.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go over to you. I'm going to go over to Underdog. I'm going to find the fantasy points prop for Isaiah Pacheco. Take the higher on 14 points. So if he hits it, I win. And if it doesn't hit, I get Canes.
Deal.
Code fellas if you want to go to join their Kane's bet vicariously as well. I'll wrap out our running back sits here. DeAndre Swift. I have zero interest in him this week. You have Caleb Williams as your start of the week, Cameron. That's because you could throw on the Minnesota Vikings. You cannot run on the Minnesota Vikings. I understand you might not have better options than Swift this week, but he only gave you 9.5 against the Vikings just a few weeks ago. Now you might look at that week 12 finish and say, hey, well, he still finished as a running back 21 on the week, Lucas. Let me read you who was on bye that week. Bijan Robinson, James Cook, Chase Brown, Alvin Kamara, and Maurice Hall. Those are all top-end running backs who probably would have been ranked and finished ahead of DeAndre Swift in that week. Look, Vikings 4th fewest fantasy points per game allowed to running backs, 29th in schedule-adjusted fantasy points allowed. I know Bijan just went for 92 yards this last week, but it took him 22 carries to get there. Swift is not going to get that kind of volume. Only 4 running backs have had more than 15 carries against the Minnesota Vikings this year. So it's a tough matchup. They're going to be playing from behind an enemy territory. It's just not a great spot here for DeAndre Swift. Even if they are throwing and you think he gets involved in the check down game, it's just not going to be enough to make him a top 24 back, in my opinion, this week.
Definitely. He's had one game over 10 PPR fantasy points in his last 5. He's just, we told you, we tried so hard to get you to sell on DeAndre Swift. No, I mean, we talked about
back in like week 9. Yeah.
Yes. Every other trade video we said, get rid of him. And it's kind of coming to exactly what we thought was going to happen. And, Minnesota this week, another bad matchup. Detroit next week, another bad matchup. So yeah, I would not be excited to start him. And I do think he can lose you your week this week.
Yeah, this divisional matchup stretch for him is just horrendous. We said it's Detroit, Minnesota, and Detroit, Minnesota again in weeks 13 and 14. So not looking great for DeAndre Swift. Anything you want to add on top of that, Ty?
Nope.
We'll take a quick break, then we'll be back with our pass catching starts and sits afterwards. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. We've gone through our quarterback and running back starts and sits for week 15, round 1 of the fantasy playoffs. Let's break into the wide receivers now, fellas. Cameron, who's your wide receiver start of the week?
I'm going to go with Adam Thielen, the old man. And it's just because we talked about him again. Another one I stole from last eepisode, I understand. But we've talked about how good we've talked about how good he's been. 10 plus targets, 8 plus receptions, 99 plus receiving yards in 2 straight games, averaging 21.6 fantasy points PPR during that stretch. Wide receiver 12 in expected fantasy points, finished as a wide receiver 6 and wide receiver 17. So he's playing really well. Bryce Young is starting to play a lot better. We talked, Ty touched on it with Chuba Hubbard, and they're playing this Dallas team who's been middle of the road against pass. Right? They haven't been bad. They haven't been great. And they're an offense that just doesn't move the ball a lot. So, it gets back to Carolina quite a bit. So I just think that it's a good enough matchup where with as hot as Adam Thielen's been playing, that you can trust him. Right? It's not a smash matchup where you're like, I have to have him. But with the fact that he's playing this well, and he's not playing San Francisco, who's been playing, very well, I would definitely probably put him close to top 24 wide receiver, as we said yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about it yesterday. He jumped from the wide receiver 40 to the wide receiver 33 this week in Fantasy Pros consensus rankings. And you and I argued that should actually probably be higher, like closer to the running back or right back wide receiver 26 or 26, 27, somewhere in that range. So there's definitely a case that Adam Thielen actually is like a wide receiver 2 play this week. But I think in our ranking, he's going to end up in flex territory. You haven't added your thoughts in here on Adam Thielen yet, Ty. Cameron and I have talked to quite some ends about Adam Thielen over the last couple of days here. Where are you at with Adam Thielen?
The guy is over 20% target share since returning from his injury. And I think you, Lucas, had said it on the episode yesterday. Bryce Young is going to look Thielen's way because Thielen is reliable.
Yeah.
And that's what's been working for him the last 2 weeks. That shouldn't change. Even if they're only going to throw the ball 24 times, Thielen should get the majority of those because, again, he is Bryce Young's favorite target.
I'm just pulling up Adam Thielen's target share here. I feel like it's significantly higher than 20%, isn't it?
It's 21.7.
Over the last 2 weeks. Yeah, over the last 2 weeks, he's got a 26% target share.
Yeah.
If you remove that first week coming back from injury, that's what I was curious about when he's drawing, 10, 11 targets each game there. So, and Bryce Young, like, kudos to him, man. It looked like it was Jover at the start of the season, and now he's come back and he's playing some pretty fine football right now. I love listening to the two guys over at Underdog, Josh Norris and Hayden Wings, debate. Is Bryce Young's play fine, or is it really good? Is it decent, or is it good football right now? I do think Bryce Young is playing good football right now. So keep that up with Adam Thielen as well. You got the matchup for it. I love Adam Thielen this week. I think he is actually like relatively high floor. I don't know how high the ceiling is, but like very, very high floor flex play this week. If you want a guy who's going to give you a 12 to 13 automatically, like Adam Thielen is 100% your guy. He might even give you more than that too. I'll come to you here, Ty. I actually have an appreciation for your wide receiver start this week. I'll touch more on why after you explain who your wide receiver start of the week is.
It's Keenan Allen. So I'm fine. I'm starting the tag team partner of Cam's QB start. Just 2 weeks ago against Minnesota, Keenan Allen went for 9 catches on 15 targets for 86 yards and a score. He was the wide receiver 5 on the week. And as you can see on the film on YouTube, I tried to grab as many looks against a blitzing linebacker or a blitzing corner where Caleb is targeting Keenan Allen, because in this game, Keenan Allen is Caleb Williams. He's the quick out against an incoming blitzer from this Minnesota defense. 7 of his 9 receptions were within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. So again, that just confirms Caleb is looking for Keenan Allen against a blitz package. Last week against San Francisco, yes, it was not a good game for Chicago. Caleb was sacked 7 times, and 6 of the 7 sacks came when only the front 4 rushed the quarterback. So they're either coverage sacks or Caleb is just holding onto the ball for God knows what reason. And that's been his curse all year, is that he's just been holding onto the ball for too long. So does Minnesota learn from the last time, right? Probably not try to blitz as much, potentially. But Minnesota hasn't changed that all year. It doesn't matter who they play. They're going to continue to blitz the quarterback. They're first in blitzes per drop back. So I'm willing to take the risk again that they're going to continue to try to bring pressure on Caleb. And when that happens, Caleb is going to look Keenan Allen's way.
Yeah, the reason why I appreciate this is that I think a lot of people are going to look and say, DJ Moore, he's the guy you got to play this week. They're not willing to go as deep and say, yeah, but if they're blitzing, like Keenan Allen's going to be the quick out guy. If they're in the red zone and Minnesota brings pressure, Keenan Allen's going to be the quick guy inside of the 7-yard line, I'll say. Maybe not quite 10-yard line, but anywhere between the 5 and the 10. like Keenan Allen's going to be the quick out guy to the end zone. So, yeah, you had a touchdown on top of his potential production too. Keenan Allen could end up being a perfectly fine play this week. How about you, Cameron? How high would you put Keenan Allen in your rankings, recognizing it might not necessarily be a high yardage day? If you're playing a PPR format, you could get another 7 receptions in this game with potential touchdown sprinkled on top.
Yeah, I think he actually falls pretty well within where Fantasy Pros has him. They have him as wide receiver 36, so the end of flex. I think he should be probably closer to 30 to 31,
Sure.
in that same range as Marvin Harrison Jr., Jaden Reed, because he's going to be more of the floor play where, Jaden Reed, Marvin Harrison, you're banking on them kind of coming back, but they do have a very low floor as well. So I think that's kind of where he falls. Of if you need a solid guy who no matter what is going to go out and get you 10 points, Keenan Allen's probably your guy this week. He showed that he still does have a pretty decent ceiling, right? That hasn't gone away at all. I wouldn't bank on it, but I think he is the guy that if you're, I got a lot of variability elsewhere. I need someone solid in that, second flex, first flex, even. Keenan Allen's your guy.
I'm gonna look. I'm gonna talk about my wide receiver start, and it's gonna spark one or two responses from people. It's going to spark a, well, duh, or it's going to spark, no, you don't understand my pain. Because my wide receiver start this week is Deebo Samuel of the San Francisco 49ers. I hit less than 25 receiving yards in each of his last 4 games. He has finished as a wide receiver 55 or worse in those games. But you know what? Not struggling at all, just not getting the ball. Just because I voiced my opinions don't mean I'm hating on any of my teammates. This man, Deebo Samuel, has been a Rams killer in his NFL career. 20-plus fantasy points in 5 of his last 7 games against the Rams. For his career, he has scored 15-plus fantasy points in all but 2 games against them. This is the quintessential squeaky wheel gets the grease this week. Scare money don't make money in the fantasy playoffs. So if there's a week where you're going to fire up Deebo Samuel, Ty's looking at me with disgust. I'm going to come to you first, Ty, with that look. I'm willing to roll the dice on Deebo Samuel this week. A lot of people are going to be in on Jawan Jennings. They're going to look back to his game earlier this year against the Rams and say, yeah, run it back, baby. To which I say, what if it's actually a Deebo Samuel week? What if it's actually Deebo's turn to give you another 15 to 20 point week this week? So go ahead. This might make me look stupid. But if you're taking a long shot here in the fantasy playoffs, if you're up against the 1 seed and you need a desperation, like I'll take any home run hitters I can get. I think it's Deebo Samuel this week that could be a home run hitter for you. So go ahead, Ty. You can counter back in. You don't like this one clearly.
Maybe I'll say it like this. If you're a high seed in your fantasy playoffs, Deebo Samuel should not be in your starting lineup. Okay.
I get if you don't want to chance it. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Maybe my reaction is too late because again, his quotes of I'm not struggling at all, just not getting the ball. We had like an opposite reaction to AJ Brown saying something about his role in the offense.
I feel like that was more about his relationship with Jalen Hurts, though. I feel like that's a little bit different.
Sure. Okay. I'll just say this. I don't care how good Deebo has been. I'm not willing to take the chance because I know what the floor is. And the floor is 5 points.
Yeah, you all can sit back and watch me while I make money this week then. What about you, Cameron? You're shaking your head too.
Yeah, there is not a chance I am putting Deebo Samuel in my lineup.
Thank you.
I mean,
geez.
They got behind him in their rankings. He's at wide receiver 40. They got Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore.
Wide receiver 40?
Yep. Then they got Amari, Elijah Moore, Roma Dunze, Demario Douglas, Quentin Johnston, and I would start all of them ahead of Deebo this week because I am so freaking scared of how bad he's going to be.
You would start Quentin Johnston.
I'm pretty sure Quentin Johnson has more targets on the season right now than Deebo.
He probably does. I mean, Underdog came out with a tweet today. Deebo Samuel only has like 520 something yards on the season. It's only 500 and something.
Yeah.
I get it. If you don't want to chance it, I rarely have convictions and I'm willing to stand on them. This is that's true. It's false. I have a bunch of other stupid convictions I stand on in life, but in fantasy football specifically, this is one that I'm willing to stand on. I think we see Debo show out on Thursday night. I'm willing to look stupid afterwards. I'm willing to. I'll bring it back to. I see you over there. I'm willing. Look. If you want to put another one on the line, let's do it.
No, I want to do a player A versus player B. Okay.
Oh no, we're not doing this.
Yes, we are.
No. My argument isn't that Debo has been good or like, you know what, the numbers aren't as bad as they seem. It's been terrible. I said that up front. Wide receiver 55 or worse in his last 4 games. Couldn't go above 25 receivers. I'm not saying that's been good. I'm saying let the people sleep. I will stand on my conviction here. This has nothing to do with player A versus player B. Debo stunk, man. There's no denying that. But I'll go ahead and I'll put it on the line this week for Debo Samuel.
No, I just want to give some perspective to Debo this year. Just it's a fun fact.
Go ahead. I'll sit back here and wait.
Okay. Player B, okay, 53 receptions, 72 targets, 574 yards on the year, 1 touchdown. Debo Samuel, 40 receptions, 64 targets, 553 yards, 1 touchdown. Who is player B?
I know it because I was going to say this player too.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Make fun of me. No, just go ahead.
No. I give you a guess.
Give you a guess?
Yeah.
Elijah Moore.
No, that would be hilarious. So it's actually, I don't want to say it's worse. It's worse. It's Ray McLeod.
Ray.
That is worse. Again, my argument now that I have reset myself here. My argument is not that Debo's been good. That's not my argument. My argument is that he's a Rams killer, and I'm going to play the matchup here. I'm going to play the squeaky wheel gets the grease, no matter how bad it's been recently. Debo's too good of a player to not have a bounce back game at some point here before the end of the season. I think this is the matchup he does it in. That's all I'm trying to say.
This should be
too good of a player. That boy.
Turn on some film sometime, will you? Let's we're done with that. Let's move on to our wide receiver sits now. This shouldn't spark as much controversy. Well, I don't know. Maybe it will because Cameron, this is a guy I feel like you talk about him as a sit, and unfortunately, it's when he explodes. So, Cameron, you might actually be doing the people a favor this week.
He is my kryptonite, and it is Zay Flowers. Every time I talk about Zay Flowers, he does the opposite. It has not mattered. However, he is playing the Giants this week, and since week 8, the Giants have not allowed a single wide receiver to go for more than 75 receiving yards. They've had only 2 teams throw the ball more than 30 times on them since week 6, and it was the Cowboys and Saints in their last 2 games. I don't think the Ravens are going to need to throw the ball in this one. Derrick Henry could have 45 carries for 450 yards and 6 touchdowns, and that could be how the game goes. Like that's just how I think they're going to dominate. But on the season, 9 of his 13 games, he's finished outside the top 30 wide receivers. And on top of that, like I said, the Giants could get dominated. They're on the 7th most rush yards a game over their last 5. That's my concern more than anything. Not that, Zay Flowers isn't good enough to play against this Giants defense. It's that they're not going to need to throw. We talked about this game last week. They're 15.5-point favorites on the road.
Which is just a stupid number.
They're going to run the ball. That's my concern, is that the floor for Zay Flowers outweighs whatever ceiling you can think of because of just how low it's been. And so he needs a touchdown because that's been in his 4 games. 3 of those 4, he scored a touchdown where he was inside the top 30. I just don't know if they're going to need him to score a touchdown in this one. I'm more staying away cautiously, understanding that he could have a good week. But the odds of him having a good week feel a lot lower than the odds of him having a bust week.
I was looking at Underdog's projections earlier today. This has nothing to do with Zay Flowers. It kind of has something to do with Zay Flowers. But Derrick Henry's projection was at 97.5 rushing yards. And I'm thinking, there's no way this can't be over 100. Are you serious? It is up. And then like 4 hours later, it's up to 101 now. But yeah, you're right. They could just come in and just dog walk Tommy DeVito and this New York Giants team, and nobody would be shocked in the slightest. And it doesn't have to come through the air. It could literally be a pure Yeti day in December. If there's snow on the ground in MetLife. What about you, Ty? Zay Flowers, in, out, indifferent?
Probably in, because the thing is, like, even if Baltimore doesn't need to throw the ball a ton, Zay Flowers being 14th in target share on the year means that when they do throw the ball, they are kind of looking Zay Flowers' way. So I think if Zay Flowers has a good game, it's not going to be a shock to me because, again, they do like to throw to Zay Flowers. But at the end of the day, I think 10 times out of 10, I'm taking Zay Flowers over Deebo Samuel.
Oh, jeez. I don't blame you if you want to play Zay over Deebo this week.
Are you
playing Deebo over Zay?
I'm still playing Zay over Deebo.
No. I'm indifferent on Zay. I think I'd still be willing to play Zay over Deebo this week. But
I think
that's wild. That's a wild statement.
Clip it. Somebody clip it, please.
Lucas has drank all the Deebo Kool-Aid right now.
You all, if he pops off,
yes,
on Thursday Night Football, you are not going to hear the end of it from me.
That's all right.
Next week,
I might not even show up next week.
Screenshots in the group chat. I will be unbearable over the next week. Ty, what about you? Who's your wide receiver set this week?
It's DeAndre Hopkins. I hate to pick on another Chiefs player, but I got to do it. Hopkins has been a fringe starter ever since he got traded to Kansas City. He's a wide receiver 35 in points per game, wide receiver 36 in yards per route run, wide receiver 37 in usage, wide receiver 39 in targets per game. It's a 54.6% route participation in Kansas City. Like, we are barely scraping by here with DeAndre Hopkins. Yes, he has scored at least 13 points in each of his last 3 games. I just don't think that happens for a 4th week against a Cleveland defense, allowing the 7th fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers the last 4 weeks. I'm definitely looking elsewhere here.
The only thing that I'm potentially worried about here with DeAndre Hopkins is what if Jameis starts slinging it around the yard? What if Jameis is, throwing it 45? He's probably going to throw it 45 times. Who am I kidding in this game? Like, what if it does end up becoming a game where, the Browns are converting enough and putting up enough points where the Chiefs, they can't just settle for 17 Isaiah Pacheco rushing attempts, and instead they do need to toss the ball around the yard a bit more. I get you probably have higher upside options than DeAndre Hopkins this week. That's where I'm worried that pick could go wrong, though, is, Jameis could just be throwing the ball enough and converting enough, throwing enough touchdowns to, the likes of Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku that it might actually force Patrick Mahomes to step back and swing it a bit more this week. So I don't know. Where do you lie, Cameron? That's my only hesitation on, potentially sitting DeAndre Hopkins this week. But I also don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that people actually have 2 or 3 better options than DeAndre Hopkins on their team this week.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of you. I think if you can avoid it, I probably wouldn't start him, but wide receiver 34 feels about right for DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
He's seen 9 targets in each of the last 2 games, but he's only played over 60% of snaps in 1 game so far this year. So it's, I think it's the both sides of it where you see the upside, we can talk about it. You see the downside, and it really does feel 50-50 on which way it breaks. And if he doesn't score a touchdown, that's really the crux of it. Is with the Chiefs, he's had 4 double-digit games. Only 1 of them are without a touchdown. So if you think he scores a touchdown this week, he's probably a good bet. If you don't, he's probably going to get you single-digit fantasy points.
I think that's a good way to put a bow on that. Is if he finds the end zone, you're in business. If he doesn't, you think, man, maybe I should have started Rico Dowdle over him this week, which I think we all would be in favor of against the Carolina Panthers, just for one example of a player you might have that's better than DeAndre Hopkins this week. My wide receiver sit this week, I hate to take low hanging fruit, man, but some people might not realize that Josh Downs is coming back, so my sit of the week is Michael Pittman. I'll just start there. Josh Downs is coming back, so you're not going to get Michael Pittman moving around the formation into the slot as much here. He's been the wide receiver 44 in 4 of his last 5 games, 44 or worse, excuse me. He was the wide receiver 15 against the Lions, but that's just one of the easiest secondaries to pick on here. So if Michael Pittman is playing on the perimeter in this game, he's going to get Pat Surtain. And it's actually, people look at the wide receiver stats against the Broncos and they'll think, they actually haven't been that bad. But what it actually is that slot wide receivers have been the ones dominating the Denver Broncos, where Pat Surtain is not. So again, it feels like a cop-out with low-hanging fruit here, but I just want to stress that Michael Pittman should be nowhere near your fantasy lineups in a pivotal first round of the playoffs game against Pat Surtain, with Josh Downs potentially coming back, who is practicing now as of Wednesday. We'll see if he suits up on Sunday, but it looks like he's tracking to play this week. So that just means Michael Pittman is locked into the outside. He's going to get Pat Surtain. And Ty, if Anthony Richardson is your sit, I'm just going to go one for one there and take the stack there and say his potential top target is also a sit this week. Cameron, anything else that you want to add on top of that? Because I know you're the number one Michael Pittman hater on this podcast.
Yeah, and it's really easy to be this year. So luckily, it's worked out. It did not work out last year, but he's a guy. He's 9th in unrealized air yards. He's 72nd in catchable target rate. Oh. He's 21st in air yards. He's 31st in targets with a 23% target share. So he's seeing the targets. They just don't throw with Anthony Richardson like he would need. Yeah, there's just so much negative, and he just hasn't given you a boom week that you should chase, right? And even when last year when he was playing really well, he really didn't give you something to chase in a boom week to win you a week. So I think best case scenario, he's the wide receiver 20, and I don't really want that in my lineup. When the worst case scenario is he's the wide receiver 91 or something like that.
Deebo Samuel or Michael Pittman?
That one will go Deebo.
So if you say Michael Pittman, I'm easily. I'm leaving if you say Michael Pittman. Stop it, Ty. Don't even stop.
I would have gone with Patrick Taylor. I mean, I would.
Whether Drendel plays or not.
That's also worthy of me taking off the headphones and walking off set right now. That's absurd. Patrick Taylor.
I mean, Michael Pittman, wide receiver 44, wide receiver 16, wide receiver 48 in the 3 games since Richardson took over again. Like you said, that wide receiver 16 game was against Detroit, and by Mageddon, by Apocalypse, part 1.
Yeah. Right.
There is no intrigue for Michael Pittman at this point.
Before we move on to our tight end starts and sits of the week, you're probably, maybe you do have a Deebo Samuel question this week, and maybe you're like, Lucas made some strong points. Do I actually want to play him? But I don't know. Those two fellows are pretty critical of him there. If you're still wrestling with that question or any start-sit question this week, come on over to our Discord. You can post a poll in any of our channels. We will get you some help. Our community is ready to help you win your championship this year when it matters most. You can find that link down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are watching. Got a community of about 4,400 people over there that want to win fantasy football leagues with you. So you can join that if you have any more start-sit questions or just want to hang out with a bunch of other fantasy football nerds as well. Time for everyone's favorite game, fellas. Who the heck do I start at tight end this week? Let's start with the tight ends. Cameron, who are you starting at tight end this week?
I'm going to be honest. I don't think I've wavered on my tight end start in like 6
No, you really
weeks.
haven't. This is pretty consistent.
But we talked about him on the waiver wire show. He's only at 45% rostered, so he's out there to start. It's Hunter Henry, and just chase the volume. He's seen 8-4, 9 targets with Drake May. He only has 1 game under 9 fantasy points during that stretch, and he hasn't scored a touchdown yet. So he's not touchdown dependent. He's not going to give you a goose egg. Arizona's not a great matchup by any means, but I think at this point, Hunter Henry should be treated as a top 12 tight end and should be started in pretty much every league.
Yeah, if he's Drake May's number 1 target here, no reason to not play him if you are thin at the position. Ty, I'll come to you. Who's your tight end start this week?
Sam Laporta. Welcome back, Sammy Ballgame.
Yeah.
To the tight end start segment. He's been the tight end 8 in usage since week 10. And he has 3 games with 10 or more fantasy points in those games. Yes, he is a bit touchdown dependent, more touchdown dependent for sure than a guy like Hunter Henry. But the fact of this, This Buffalo-Detroit game, the over-under for this game is 53.5 total points. That is by far the highest of the week. Yeah. So people are expecting a shootout with Sammy Ballgame, with Sam Laporta this week. I just want a piece of that game. So if you've got Sam Laporta, I think he is definitely a candidate to fire up this week.
Yeah, mine might feel a little bit more risky just based on production recently and also missed time in general. I'm going to go with Jake Ferguson actually this week as my tight end start of the week. He's only given you one finish inside of the top 20 tight ends in his last 6 games, but man, it's the Carolina Panthers. It's the most fantasy points per game and touchdowns allowed to the position this year. It's first in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to the position. Look, the position is thin. This is a good matchup. Just attack it. You might not have a better option on your waiver wire than Jake Ferguson. I'm not willing to go out and find a Cole Kmet or like a Dalton Schultz or anything. Like, just stick with your Jake Ferguson. It's going to be fine. I would much rather play him in this matchup that I actually think will probably be potentially more competitive than it might not be fun to watch, but I actually think it probably will be more competitive than people are willing to give it credit for this week. Tight ends you want to sit, or maybe just let's call this tight ends you don't really want to stream this week, even though, I guess 2 of our guys are guys that you might actually be considered starting this week. I can't say that's true for yours, Cameron, but I also get why he's a guy you just have zero interest in whatsoever. So who's your tight end set? Oh, now no! It's your turn. Oh, zip.
That's my bad. First time ever.
Golly. Hey, you know what? First time for everything.
Yep. That's what I get for dropping the drop on Ty earlier of Dominic the Donkey. But
that is true.
We need to stop trying to make Pat Freiermuth a thing at the tight end position in fantasy football. Fantasy Pros has him ranked as a top 12 tight end, which is just bizarre to me. I get he's at 18 and 13 last 2 weeks, but if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's not gonna put up fantasy points. He's got four double-digit games on the season. All of them he scored a touchdown in. I don't think he scores against Philly this week, so I want nothing to do with it. Otherwise, you're probably looking at 3 catches for 17 yards and 4.1 fantasy points. So if he's a guy that if you want 6 points at your tight end position, start Pat Freiermuth. If you don't, start someone else.
You were giggling a little bit, Ty. What were you giggling about?
I just love the week 10 stat line, right? Tight end 8 finish on the week, 3 catches for 17 yards and a score.
Yeah.
So, that could be the kind of week that you get from Freiermuth. And with everyone playing this week, that is going to be nowhere close to a startable week.
Yeah. Where are you at with your tight end sit, Ty? This one's a little bit interesting to me.
Yeah, I figured this one would be interesting because I know that you have kind of been the defender of K. Dotton. I'm here to kind of tell you that I think it's time to let K. Dotton sit on your bench this week, or moving forward, I should say. Tight end 22 in usage since Mike Evans came back from his injury. Yes, he led the team in receiving yards last week against Vegas, but against the Chargers this week, no thanks. Bottom 5 in fantasy points per game, allowed the last 4 weeks to tight ends, 10th fewest on the year. I think there are better tight end options than K. Dotton at this point.
Would you consider Dalton Kincaid a better option than K. Dotton?
I feel like they're going to be right next to each other in my ranking. So it's a coin flip between those 2 guys at that point.
You agree, Cameron? You got a little bit of a head nod there. I mean, that's who my tight end sit is this week. I might get bailed out if he doesn't actually suit up, but it's looking like he's going to track to play now after missing the last handful of weeks here. Detroit's dead last in fantasy points per game allowed to tight ends, 30th in schedule adjusted fantasy points. Look, I'm just good on passing on his first game back from injury. I don't think it's a guarantee we get a full snap load right away here for him. So if you got other options, I think I would play a Hunter Henry over him this week. I wouldn't go as far as Pat Freiermuth, but like a Hunter Henry, if you got a Jonnu Smith, some of those middling guys, I think you could definitely play them over Dalton Kincaid this week and what will potentially be his first game back with not a full workload right away. And it's not like it was great before that either. So yeah, Dalton Kincaid, you can pass on him this week against the Detroit Lions. Anything you all want to add before we hang it up here?
Go win this week.
Can't wait to get my Caniac.
Did I also get that matchup right? The Bills do play the Lions this week, right?
Yes, they do.
They do. Okay. I said that, and then I had a total panic moment of Crap, I don't know if they actually play the Lions. I did record that all wrong.
May or may not be in your notes, but that's okay.
Well, no, it is. But like, I don't know why I had like the split panic moment of like, wait, I'm actually not confident in that anymore. That doesn't matter. I'm confident in Deebo Samuel this week, though. Make sure you follow us on the socials.
One last note.
FF Fellows on Twitter, the FF Fellows on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellows on Facebook and TikTok, which is unfortunately potentially going away come mid-January. So if you're supportive of our content, make sure you give our YouTube Shorts page a follow as well, Fantasy Football Fellows Shorts. Make sure you follow us over on Facebook, Instagram as well. We post all of our shorts over there too. That will really help us out in our transition if we can get an extra boost from you all supporting our work outside of the podcast as well. You can follow us personally. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on Twitter, Cam Law FFF for Cameron, Tyler _Plath for Ty. We'll be back next week with a little bit of a changed schedule. We will confirm that with you all by the end of the week here. Content will be slightly different, but we will still be bringing you league-winning advice. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell as well so you know when that newest content is going up. We appreciate you all supportive of our work. We will see you all soon. Best of luck in Week 15, Round 1 of the Fantasy Playoffs. Deuces.
Deuces.